Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have on the show Matt Garman. Good morning to you, Matt.
Good morning.
Good to see you. You're known as the corporate adventurer. You're a leadership and growth speaker. You talk about mentoring and sales coach to growth-focused businesses. You've done many challenges, which we're going to talk about, which has led you to be known as the corporate adventurer, like channel swimming and rowing the Atlantic as well. And today we will be exploring vision, people, and process, and we'll be touching on vulnerability as well in leadership, but also linking back to how you got there through the Atlantic row and through channel swimming. So before we get into that conversation, Matt, I just want to ask you, what do you love about what you do?
I think one of the main things I love about what I do, and also I just like meeting people. I like meeting people. I'm very open-minded. I think I'm a naturally curious individual, and just kind of got an appetite for learning. Well, finding out about people and learning more stuff. Really, yeah. Just I think curiosity. But I love meeting new people, and I love meeting people with who are good at things and also have a different perspective on life.
Yeah, and it's good to be curious, isn't it? I think as individuals, and I'm a coach, and it's all about curiosity. When people say things or do things, I get curious about what's behind all that and start to dig a little bit more. And hence my what I do, the podcast, I get curious about what people say and what people have got to share. So I want you to share a little bit about your background and what sort of led you really to get you to take on challenges like, row the Atlantic or swim the channel. I mean, they're huge challenges in itself, and almost what was the purpose behind it? What was the vision behind it that got you to sort of do those massive endeavors? Because they are huge. I mean, now you've done them, you probably don't see it that way. I don't know, but it'd be just interesting to understand what was behind all that.
I think the honest answer is a complex one, and that's probably a lot of what I've probably done is sort of a little bit anxiety driven. I think, to be honest with you, I have a fairly unconventional background. I had come from a very academic family, and my everyone in my family have got lots of letters after their names, and I just didn't want to follow that. And then I'm middle child as well. That doesn't help. Didn't want to follow the whole academic thing. I have two interests in life. Well, I had two interests in life as a teen. One was playing rugby, and the other one was going fishing. And at 16 years old, not knowing what I wanted to do, I got a job as a T-boy on a trawler. And that was a little bit of.
That's a challenging role, isn't it? I mean, you say that quite glibly on a trawler, which is pretty rough seas, and it's pretty going for it, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think as much. I didn't really take myself that seriously at the time. It's like, well, it was just a job. It wasn't. But It dawned on me pretty quickly afterwards that it was a bit of a. Well, not at the time. It was a bit of a disappointment for what felt like a disappointment for the family, black sheep, and a little bit black sheep sort of thing. I ended up actually leaving home soon after that as well, because it just didn't fit in. And I think, just going back to the challenges, I think one of the things I've done is I think I've tried to make up and impress in other ways. And I think the challenges is probably, if I'm being honest with myself, which I'm a lot more honest now than I used to be, probably with a bit of age. I think if I'm being honest, a lot of it was me sort of basically saying to my folks and my family that, there's something there, I'll show you, but it's just not the kind of channel that you kind of you thought it was going to go down, really. So I think it was more just to try and prove to my folks, I suppose, as much as anything else, that there was something there. It's not healthy. It's not a healthy.
No. It's an interesting one, because I think a lot of us get into those situations where we try and prove people wrong, or I'll show you, and you say your outlet for showing how good you are in comparison to your siblings was to do something as big as an Atlantic row or swim the channel, which are pretty epic in themselves. obviously that was probably the kickoff. But was that what kept you going? Because obviously, there's challenges along the way of, I don't know how many days it took you to row the Atlantic, but there's a lot of challenges. And did that keep you going, or was there other things that started to evolve and start to become a bit more deeper, purposeful that came out of that?
I think what happened was the row I've always been curious. The row, what happened was, I think that I embarked on this journey. Initially, actually did it, after the fishing, which I never, one of the guys was killed died on the boat, not my boat, the boat that tied up next to it. And I kind of was at a stage where I wanted to change something and I couldn't get a job. So I stumbled into sales. So I've kind of channeled myself. That was the first start of channeling myself and my energies into work and business, which has taught me a huge amount as well. But I think what then happened is that was a catalyst. And then it's like everything else in life. It's like, well, what's next? What's next? What's next? So 20 years ago or 30 years ago, if somebody said to me, you were going to row the Atlantic or you've been involved in some of the channel, it's like, I don't think it would have got on the radar. But I think what's happened is it's just, and that's the other thing as well. We're all up ourselves a little bit. It's like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And it's just, so that's just, I think it was just an evolution as opposed to a specific focus.
And talk us about that row, because obviously rowing the Atlantic is, even getting to the start line is a challenge in itself, even before you set off, because of sponsorship, training. Talk us about that whole, or getting to the start line, but also the actual row itself, some of the challenges that you faced along the way.
Well, you're quite right in what you say. The biggest challenge, and they say this when you sign up, the biggest challenge is actually getting to the start line. We signed up. It's a bit one of the reasons for pushing myself in life was to kind of prove my folks, mostly my dad, who I got on well with generally really, really well, that I wasn't, I'll call it a waste of space or something like that. But he was ill. He was terminally ill at the end of 2019. And I used to pick him up from his house and take him down to the seafront, and we'd look out to sea. And because I live in Seaford, and he would, and I asked him, and I've not had many conversations with people that are dying. And I asked him, I said, do you have any regrets? And he said, he looked out and he said, I probably could have got myself a little bit fitter. And then I looked out to sea as well, and I said, I'm thinking of rowing an ocean. And he just chuckled in the car, and he said, why doesn't that surprise me? Anyway, he started going downhill. We got him into a home. I think it was the 16th of March. And then, of course, we went into lockdown on the 26th of March. So I helped get him a little bit comfortable. And then unfortunately, when lockdown came, I never saw him again. So that was because he died about a month later, and obviously we didn't, just at the time everything was at the really front end of. So then there's a whole mix of emotions, particularly with a given fragmented relationship in the past. It's like, and then after all, coming out of all of those, there was one morning I was like, right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that row. I'm going to do that. And like when you
was that on the back of the sort of him talking about the regrets he had about?
Not so much that it was, but I did reflect on the conversation. Reflect on the conversation, and I said that I was thinking of doing it. And like sometimes you wake up in the morning and we've all got loads and loads of stuff to do, but there's something I have to do today. And that's something for me on that particular day. I never remember when it was I'm gonna sign up for this row. So then it was then I spoke to a very good friend of mine, Neil, who I played rugby with, and he was chomping at the bit from day one. And then eventually, when I'm looking out to see my wife's there. No, eventually when my wife was kind of not accepting of me doing it, but accepting that it wasn't going to go away. Then it's like, why don't you do it as a 4? Because you'll get there faster. So we went looking for other teammates, and we kind of got up to 4. But what's really quite interesting is we ended up doing it as a 3 because all of those, it's a dynamics type thing as well. And I've had those experiences through business as well. But it's no slant on any individual. It's just the fact that so many things have got to come together for that to happen. And whether it was not fully engaged or not fully prepared or fully committed or whatever, I'm not going to go down that route. But that period of time, it took us nearly 3 years to put together a campaign to row the ocean. So that's, obviously you've got to buy a boat, you've got to train, you've got to get sponsorship, all these sorts of things. And then, I think we clocked up about 5 million meters each on our rowing machines as well, just to put it in context as to what it takes to get yourself ready for that. And then obviously that's actually just the base prep and the physical element. But that's I'm going to say 10% of it, 90% of it's in your head. Mm-hmm. So there was only, and then you only realise that when you're actually on it.
So talk about that that 90% in your head, because obviously you've trained physically, so you could physically row it. You do all the sort of drills and all the navigational piece and all the safety stuff. So talk us through that 90% mindset piece. What were some of the challenges that you faced, and what were any hacks that you developed, evolved, that created throughout that time in the row?
It was really one of the reality. So we were a team of 3 on a boat, and it's non-stop. Obviously, there's nothing in between the Canary Islands and Antigua, so it is genuinely non-stop. So the boat's moving all the time. So we're a team of 3, and we decided, having listened to some other crews, that we would row with 2 people rowing 2 people rowing and 1 person resting during the daylight hours, and at night time we would drop down to 1 rower, and you'd row for 1 hour and have 2 hours off. So the longest sleep we had was, genuine sleep, was sort of 2 hours over 7 weeks. So the one of the biggest challenges is, you are genuinely sleep deprived. And when we were setting off, there was a lady next to it, in the boat next to us, and they said, everyone said, "Oh, you've Gemma," and we all took this on board from her. Everyone keeps talking about eat, sleep. Eat, sleep, row, repeat. Eat, sleep, row, repeat. That's all you do. That's all you do. And she interjected when somebody was talking about that on the very start line on the key sign, and she said, "Eat, sleep, row, be kind," and be kind to your teammates and be kind to yourself, because it's going to take you places that you just don't want to go. So highest highs, lowest lows. And upon reflection, I don't actually know that I could have prepared properly mentally for it, because it's just, the highest highs and the lowest lows. And times when, you're looking at your watch and you're desperate to come off shift, and you've looked at your watch 5 times in the last 5 minutes, literally counting down the last minute, because your hands are on fire, your backside's on fire, your back's aching, and every other thing, every other minute thing is amplified.
How do you? I mean, obviously that's quite challenging. How do you keep going? What are you doing to keep the sort of mindset going that keeps you going and stops not giving up or stop rowing or whatever it is? What's making it go? Is that to do with what you've committed to, or is it other sort of hacks that you did?
I think some of it is I think there's some hacks, there's some stuff I listen to on audio books, but fundamentally I think the bottom line is so I then beforehand I did a lot of team sport, then I did some individual stuff, then I've gone back to team, and I think what I've realised is I'm at my best when I'm in a very small tight team. So to me, talking to myself and saying, like, I'm not letting anyone down. I'm not suggesting it was anything different for the other guys, but whatever in my head is, if there is a weak link, if there ends up being a weak link, it won't be me. It just won't be me.
And when you're I suppose doing these sort of things, and we talk about leadership, and we talk about leadership as a clear vision is really, really quite crucial. How do we maintain that focus of vision during, whether that's tough aspects in business or tough aspects in terms of rowing an Atlantic? What are you doing, and what support and advice would you give anybody who's doing that sort of challenge, whether in the business world or in a sort of sporting world?
If I speak at events, I talk about vision, people, and process, and they're the three things that I kind of. And it's interesting because in the businesses that I've been involved in, vision, people, and process is something so they're the three things I've always. So it doesn't matter if that's business or adventure. And I think the other some of those things, if we're to expand on that, is the vision is is it clear? Is it communicated well? Is there commitment there? And I think the final thing of the C's, so to speak, is clarity. And I don't think it necessarily, I don't think sometimes you don't need. I'm a believer that it doesn't need to be over complex, but it needs to, whatever you're trying to achieve, we need to eliminate any potential ambiguity. So the three things, the vision for the row was, at the time, we were going to build a team of 4 people to row the ocean. Obviously, that didn't happen. We were going to get to Antigua in less than 50 days. And we were going to step off the boat still firm friends. So whatever we do, chaps, this is what we said we were going to sign up to. Okay. And again, least amount of words as possible, provided that there's no ambiguity. And we under 50 days, we came in at 49 days, 15 hours and 12 minutes. Because would you believe it or not, there is a stopwatch on every single team. It's been going quite a long time, but there's a stopwatch.
Well, you achieved that, which is great. And were you friends at the end as well?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and in actual fact, when there's times we had, if you imagine, so that our combined age was 154 between 3 blokes, 3 dads, and we had. I don't mind saying it. I'm not going to go into specific details, but we had probably the most leveling conversations that you could possibly imagine. It's just 3 middle-aged blokes on a rowing boat, and we honestly spoke about everything. And I think that comes back down to something we spoke about a while ago, Julian, is vulnerability. I think, and we spoke about everything.
And how do you create that vulnerability without going on a 49-day row across the Atlantic? How do we get to that place where we genuinely, because guys probably find this harder than I think sort of women, I think, in terms of being vulnerability in a context of with other guys as well. How have you sort of tried to replicate that in a business context?
I think for me, both business and with the adventure stuff, it's honestly about being authentic. I think, so trying to open things up on the boat is really, really easy, because it's like, you can talk about everything, and there's nobody else that's ever going to be, we talk about Chatham House rules in business. It's like, well, there's 3 blokes on a boat, and there's no one else for 250 miles. So you're pretty free to say whatever you want to say to people, right? And we would talk about, everything, some really deep thoughts, some of our own individual personal vulnerability. I think for me, it's being authentic, but also creating that environment where people can just. Ours was the environment was the environment. So, I think if we turn that around to business, I've just literally come back from working with a client in Germany, and there were 5 people I'd never met before, and And one of the first things we agreed, let's it's nothing wrong. Is everyone okay to be vulnerable? And there's a couple of things that came out, and I'd never met these people, but they all knew each other. They thought, or I thought, very well. There were a couple of things that came out literally in the first morning of stuff that I was trying to kick around. And it's like, oh my God, I didn't know that about you, or I didn't know that was going on. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm sorry I was short with you last week because I had no idea you were that was going on. So to me, I think a lot of it is just creating that environment, or allowing that and saying it's okay. It's okay to let's have a room. I don't show me the perfect person, and I'll show you the perfect liar. So we're all in that space, right? We're all in that space. We've all got stuff to deal with. Some people, unfortunately, have got a lot more to deal with than others. So give them some space, be clear, and and I think being vulnerable is important.
And it's interesting, actually, you in your session with your client, you almost said, let's be vulnerable. You almost put it out there, which is interesting way to start. How do we create that environment in a context of if somebody is listening now, they're leading a team and they see some value in vulnerability, and we'll talk a bit more about why it's helpful, but and they want to create a vulnerability in their team, how might they go about that? What's rather than just telling people to be vulnerable, because perhaps work with your context, because it was slightly probably different, but how would that work in a team of creating that environment? What environment do they need to create?
I think that comes back down to, I spoke about vision, people, and process. It's like, okay, so articulating the vision. This is where we're trying to get to. Okay, so ultimately, what's a vision? I want to get from here to here. In my simpleton's ex-trawlerman's kind of mindset is I want to go from here to here. Okay, that's the vision, and so that's the vision. Does everyone understand what we're trying to do? We're trying to get from here to here. Okay, right. We might have to go. Okay, but fundamentally, that's what we're trying to achieve. And then to me, it's like, what do we need? What do we need in terms? If you were going to do some DIY at home, what would you need? What tools would you need? What equipment would you need? Well, in most of what we do in terms of pulling stuff together, we need some people. And to me, I'll say the right people. I don't mean I necessarily know exactly what that looks like, but the right people to fulfill that task. Whether that's skill set, whether that's mindset, whether that's commitment, whether that's attitude. It's a combination of all these sorts of things. And I think once you start creating the clarity and building that environment, creating that clarity, it's like, and oh, by the way, so we're going to go from here to here. Okay, it's going to be uncomfortable at times, but it's okay to have a chat about it, and it's okay to have a bad day, and it's okay to have an off day. I think what I'm probably saying is I'm trying to create. In doing that, I'm trying to create an environment whereby it's okay for people to say stuff, and then it's a case of for me, Julian, I can see that maybe you don't necessarily feel comfortable with that. What is that? Not in a challenging, pointy sort of way, but and again, I'm a big fan of using emotive. I'd love to help. If we can, I'd love to be able to see how we could do that. I feel that you're not, giving, or, I feel that you're not opening up completely with me. I feel there's something in there. I don't know. I've never studied that kind of stuff. But I observe people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and you're doing it intuitively, and I guess you went through a process with the Atlantic Row, which probably made you even more intuitive and how you go about that. And I guess what you're talking about here is this psychological safety, isn't it? Where people feel they can contribute, they can challenge, they can make mistakes, and they can be themselves a little bit more, as long as people are, respect each other, all that sort of stuff, which is important. And I found in situations where, from a leader's point of view, if they are trying to create an environment of vulnerability, is the leader goes first, as it were, as in you go, because it sounds like with the client, you went first with it in terms of opening up, being transparent, and sharing your own particular sort of challenges. And I think as a leader, And I think leaders often feel they need to know all the answers, have it all sorted, be in a really good place. And actually, it's okay to say, look, I don't know the answer to this. I've got this challenge coming in, got a team here. I don't exactly know. I've got some ideas, but I want to use the team. And that example of that creates vulnerability and shows actually, the boss doesn't know everything. That means I can share that I don't know everything as well. And I think it's trying to role model it is a lot more, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a series of assemblies coming up with the kids' school. It happens to be the school that I went
to. They're the toughest audience out, I tell you.
And it's the school I went to. It's the school I went to and came away with 1 GCSE, I think. So I'm, if I go back to that, that 16-year-old who got 1 GCSE, who felt like a failure, and felt like a failure for a while after that because a non-conformist. You didn't perform in the way that we thought you. It's like, well, where are you going, sort of. So if I go back to that, then I'm standing in front of these kids and I'm going, well, do you know what? You're looking at me. I've shown you a video of arriving in Antigua, and you've kind of put me up here on a pedestal. Well, I'll tell you, I'm a bit of a fraud then, aren't I? Really? Because you guys are all, I'm. If I'd have gone back to your age or 2 years, I'm probably at the bottom of the pack. So that's quite a nice thing to have a conversation about. And to me, it just goes to show that everyone, I do believe that everyone's got something in them that's pretty special. And I think that's, I get off on that, to be honest with you. People bring something. Everyone brings something.
Yeah, no, and it's a lovely. I'm similar. I think everybody's got something to contribute, and sometimes it's just finding the way, the channel, the culture, the environment, whatever it is, that will make people shine for their sort of superpower or whoever they are. I agree with you, and I think sometimes the education system's a little bit sort of binary in one way. It's not all about getting education of like degrees and stuff like that. There's other ways of creating value and impact from individuals. Why do we think vulnerability is really healthy in a context of leadership and within organizations?
Well, you can kind of align that to honesty, can't you? I think you can align that to honesty. I think in a business context, it's more complex. It's more complex in a business. I think it's more complex in a business environment than it is in an adventure. Yeah, the adventure has got a really, if you have the row, it's a really binary. Did you make it to Antigua? Yes or no? Whereas if we targeted 10 million quid revenue after whatever. Where did you end up? Well, we ended up on 8.5. It's like it's good. We did really, really well. We didn't hit 10, but we did really, really well.
That's very good. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's certainly when it comes to business compared to rowing, there's a lot more moving parts in a business than there are with 3 blokes rowing in a boat. And I think the other thing with that as well, and with the business, there's more complexity. There's quite often there's more people involved. There's probably a bit more ego and less. And I think a lot of organisations aren't clear enough about what they're trying to do. So, and I mean explicit. And then I think so that vision, call it what mission, whatever you want to call it, we're trying to get to from A to B. And I think the other thing that adds to the complexity is we tell people what we're trying to achieve verbally. We don't, and then moving into the people and the process element of it, sometimes we're not in a position to get exactly the right people that we want at the right time or other people. So there's moving parts on that. I think, dare I say it, a lot of, and it's what I talk of if I'm working with the sales team, is a lot of time companies and individuals, managers, put off the uncomfortable conversations. And I don't mean that you've got to fire some, but it's like something when there's something that needs to be said, very rarely have I ever seen things resolve themselves, particularly when it comes to individuals. So the sooner you surface stuff like that, the better. So I think that's commonly massively overlooked, and I'm sure we've all experienced organisations where somebody who has been highly prized in the organisation, maybe when it started, and probably got a little bit more influence, a lot more influence because they've been there for, and then, oh no, such and such is leaving, and then when they go, the organisation flourishes even more. And it's not because it's because maybe that person had a bit of influence in certain areas, and they just needed to be, and other potential needed to be unlocked. But then I think also, and again, moving into when I talk about process, we talk about what's the build shot. But what we fail to do is we fail to say how we're going to do it. Yeah, we want to go, we want to do this. We want to go back to, we want to hit 10 million. Okay, so what is that a dream, or is that what do we need? We need that's an ambition, great. But we need the process. We need to underpin that with something. And again, I mean, I touched on it when we initially spoke. I'm a huge fan of having a playbook. It's like, well, it's a bit like the American football. It comes from there. It's like, well, everyone knows what they're doing when they're in the 30-yard line or something. Like everyone knows this is your job. This is your job. This is what you need to do. And I just think that we could all probably in our businesses do things like that a little bit better. And obviously, and then obviously, okay, what don't you understand? What training? Where's the gaps? What training do you need? What resources do you need? Okay, but being a bit more explicit in what the expected outcomes.
No, I totally agree, and there's a lot in that. And as I said, we're just coming to the end of our conversation, and Matt, in terms of any sort of final thought and lessons that you've learned from all the challenges you've done, whether it's the rowing, swimming the channel, that has helped you or give you some insight in terms of leadership within organizations?
I think quite often in terms of leadership, one of the things I say is I speak to people people ask about leadership styles and this, that, and to me, it's about being authentic. You can't pretend to be, you can't BS someone, on a challenge or a vote or so to me, it's about being authentic. And the other thing I say to a few people is, forget the styles, okay? You actually don't, quite often, you put yourself forward to be a leader, that's fine. But ultimately, you don't decide in the eyes of the people around you, because you don't decide if you're a leader. People decide if they're prepared to follow you. Yeah, that's the reality of it. So that's where authenticity is absolutely critical, because you can't lead people if you're not being honest with yourself and you're not being honest with the teams around you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's an interesting point. Yeah, people get put into positions of leadership, but ultimately you have to approve that, and by people following you, and that's a worth of a leader. And in fact, most people who should get into leadership are the ones that people are already following before they even become leaders in themselves. And I agree, being authentic, be yourself, because trying to be somebody else is also disingenuous and all that, but also extremely stressful and difficult to try and manage something you're not, and just be who you are and what's your passion, how you go about things, and with all that kind and respect along the way. Matt, it's been great speaking to you. If people want to sort of catch up with you, engage with you, what's the best way of doing that?
I'm on LinkedIn, Matt Garman, Corporate Adventurer, and I've also got a website which is mattgarman.com. Quite simple, and it's Garman, not Garmin, as in the sat-nav people. Matt Garman.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time today, Matt. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show.